got an input in a minute from Nicki Moore, who is our key organizer with the Bill Law judging panel, and Nicki's going to just really set the scene about what this award is all about and why it's so important to NICEC. Then I'm delighted we're going to have input from Sareena Hopkins from Canada, who's going to really get us inspired to think about that link between research and practice, which is why, you know, when we've got researchers looking at moving the field forward in lots of ways, it's so important to be thinking about that connection. And we're going to do some breakouts, and then exciting bit, we're going to hear from all the shortlisted candidates. Julia's going to chair that and keep us all on time, and then at 6:20 we'll be announcing the winner and the highly commended. So that's what we've got planned. And I'm now going to pass over to Nicki without further ado to just tell you all a bit more about the Bill Law Award and why we do it at NICEC. So Nicki, over to you.
Thank you, Rosemary, and a fantastic welcome to all of you here tonight. We've been really looking forward to this evening for such a long while. So I really am pleased that you can join us all to celebrate the work of the sector's newest thought leaders. And this is the 4th year that NICEC have offered an award in Bill Law's name. The award is a legacy and a tribute to his work. And many of you may not know that Bill was a founding Fellow of NICEC. And unfortunately, Bill died in April 2017. Bill was a great thinker, and many of you will remember him as a huge character. And I think that there are so many people here this evening at this presentation who benefited from Bill's friendship, his mentorship, and his encouragement. So Bill really was a great mentor to me. I was very fortunate to have known Bill as a friend and a work colleague. And I can say that Bill was always open to new ideas. He liked nothing more than to engage in debate. He would defend his position, but he was also open to new ideas. I think it's almost an underestimation to say that Bill's work is recognised internationally. The underestimation is the word recognised. I would say Bill's work is embedded in so many aspects of everything that we do. It had an enormous impact on the way that career development is conceptualised and in the way that it's practised. And his award, the award in his name, celebrates emerging innovation within the career development sector and, importantly, the relationship between research, theory and practice. I just wanted to spend a minute talking about the award process, because for us on the panel, this seems to have lived with us for rather a long while. So we had a call for abstracts in January 2022. These were all reviewed, and we provided feedback to every single person who submitted an abstract. Not everybody who submitted an abstract submitted a final paper, but we did have 9, in fact, and we were really thrilled because this was slightly more than we'd had previously. These were all judged individually, actually, by the panel, and then we came together and we moderated those decisions. So there was an awful lot of really interesting conversation about all of the papers, and I can honestly say that it was not an easy decision. Now, I know often when you go to awards, people go, it was a really difficult decision to make, but I can honestly say it really was. We had some really, really high quality submissions this year. Now, we have chosen one winner, and we've chosen one highly commended candidate, and we will announce those later in the programme. But I just wanted to reassure everybody that even though they haven't heard back from us yet, every single person that submitted a paper will get some detailed feedback from the panel members, because it's our business to encourage and motivate people to be the best they can be. So we will encourage you to work on those papers and either submit them again or submit them for, you know, journal articles, the NICEC journal in the future sometime. So I just wanted to finish by saying a big thank you. Being involved in this award has been an absolute joy. I've done it for 4 years now. This will be my last year, but it's been a joy doing this. And I wanted to thank all of the panel members, because they do put time aside to do this. We all love it, but it's still, you know, quite time consuming. There are 4 other people on the panel. They've all worked really hard this year to make both the award and the ceremony a rigorous but enjoyable process. So I'm sure you'll join with me in thanking everybody that's been involved. So that's the end of my slides, and I want to hand over, I think, to Jill.
To me, Nicki.
Sorry, to Rosemary.
Yeah.
I beg your pardon, Rosemary.
That's no problem.
Rosemary, so that you can take us through to the next part of the agenda.
Yeah, thanks, Nicki. So hopefully that's got everyone excited about what's coming. But before we get to hearing from all the candidates, as I said at the beginning, we're really delighted to welcome Sareena Hopkins, who is a real leading light in Canada in anything to do with career development. She's an executive director of the Canadian Career Development Foundation, and she publishes a lot of work, and we're really delighted to have Sareena here today. Sareena is one of our international fellows. So I'm going to just pass over to you, Sareena, now, and a warm welcome. And we are going to be doing some interaction in this session as well. So look forward to meeting some of you in breakouts shortly. So over to you, Sareena.
Thanks so much, Rosemary, and thanks to all. It really is an honor and such a joy to be with you today for this celebration of excellence. Just delighted to be here. I hope that you can see the slides fine.
Yep.
Love it when it works. So, you know, as researchers, I think that we all hope that our work makes a real difference. We hope that our research uncovers new truths, that it results in innovation, and that ultimately it influences practice. As career professionals on the other side, those of us working on the front lines, I think that we hope that our work has real impact and that it's grounded conceptually and informed by an evidence base. And you know, there's really strong overlap between our respective goals as researchers and as career professionals. But often we end up working in isolation of one another. And so today I'm really excited to share the results of a recent Canadian study in which we as researchers partnered with frontline career professionals right from the very beginning. And they were active members of our research team. They were actively involved in conceiving the research questions, actively involved in co-constructing our methodology, in implementing protocols, and in making sense of the data. And the results were remarkably positive and in some ways surprising. But before we get started, I thought, no, I can't advance. There we go. Before we get started, this is a virtual event, so I'm just delighted to be joining you from Ottawa, which is the capital of Canada. And if you haven't already done so, I'd encourage you to pop into the chat and share where you're joining from, just so that we can see where in the world we all are. In Canada, we have a tradition of always starting any gathering with an acknowledgement of the Indigenous owners of our land. So here in Ottawa, I'm on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe nations, and I pay my respect to their culture and to their elders, past, present, and emerging. One of the things that I particularly love about where I live is that we have 4 very distinct seasons. And these are pictures that were taken near my home, representing those 4 seasons. So you see the glorious colors of fall in the upper left-hand corner. In Canada, we are of course very well known for our winters, and it can be brutally cold, but on a sunny day like you see in that picture at the bottom left, it can also be glorious. We could have -40 in the winter, And we can have plus 40 in the summer. And so I'm very glad to be on some waterways and lakes where I can swim and paddleboard and cool off. And then right in the center, you see literally where I am sitting right now as I speak with you. The garden, now that it is spring, is starting to come up in the front. And that little window on the second floor is where I'm sitting today as I join you. So before we get into this brief talk, I do want to raise some big, audacious questions for you to consider. You know, why do we research? What is our so what? Who really benefits from research and what are those benefits? And what's the art of the possible when it comes to maximizing the reach and the benefits of our research? So I'm going to ask you to carry those questions with you while I speak for the next few minutes, and we're going to come back to them shortly and have a chance to reflect on them and have some exchange. So with the Bill Law Award, we celebrate emerging innovation in the field of career development. And importantly, I loved that the description of the award highlighted the importance of the relationship between research theory and practice. When research theory or practice sit on their own, you know, each is useful, but in combination, something altogether different emerges. Just like in the image that you see on the screen, each one on its own has its own color, its own dimension. But when they combine, they form something new, something nuanced, and often, I think, more powerful. So as I said, I'm keen to share just one case example of working very much in partnership, frontline career professionals with researchers and those that they serve in a research project that we conducted over an 18-month period here in Canada. So just to give you a little bit of background on the research. In it, we partnered, as I said, from the very beginning with frontline career professionals who became part of our research team. The project was setting out to support career services to gather more meaningful metrics on the impact of those services and to use that data then to inform both policy and practice. So that was the project. That was what we were trying to achieve in the research. But before we ever started the project, we learned an enormous amount from frontline career professionals who were part of our research team that really served to shape not only what we did, but how we did it in that research. We learned from the frontline members of our team that they saw meaningful changes in those that they served as they were working together, but that these changes were almost never captured or reported. If they were tracking any kind of data, it often was how many people were served, how many people maybe got employed, maybe how many people got into training, but there were all kinds of meaningful changes that they were observing that never got tracked or reported. We learned that the assessment of a person's strengths and needs from a career development perspective was being done in very inconsistent and ad hoc ways. So when somebody came in for service, that first act of really understanding their strengths and needs was being done in all kinds of different ways without any consistency. And yet those on the front lines agreed and really were completely in agreement that that is the linchpin for quality service. If you don't understand a person's strengths, how do you build on them? If you don't understand their needs, how do you tailor services to be sure they're being met? We learned that anything to do with research, evaluation, or metrics tended to be avoided like the plague on the front lines. Why? Because it was inevitably seen as adding to their work. They already had busy schedules, and it was often not seen as relevant to their realities and day-to-day pressures. And we also learned that the only way that career professionals were motivated to collect data and be involved in evaluation was if it was highly relevant and useful to their day-to-day work. And so together with the front lines, we set out to build an approach to identifying the full range of client changes within the scope of practice of career development and articulated them into a series of strengths-based indicators. In total, we had 36 indicators across 6 career development dimensions built into an online tool called Prime that would enable practitioners and their clients to assess the strengths and needs at the beginning of service, so at intake, but it would also capture incremental changes, incremental progress as services were being delivered. And then, of course, to capture the same data using the same indicators at exit, resulting in a robust data story for every client served. The data was used then in real time as services were being delivered to adjust and refine interventions, ensuring that strengths were being mobilized and priority needs were being addressed, and to ensure that both the clients and the professionals delivering services were aware of how their collective work were actually resulting in changes. And that in itself was hugely motivating and informative. So our frontline team of researchers were actively involved, again, in shaping testing and refining every aspect of Prime. And I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that the tool would not be anything what it is today if we had gone off to create it on our own based on literature and independent inquiry. And so, you know, in this research, we worked with 6 agencies that were delivering services to very diverse clients, men who had just recently been released from prison, NEET youth, immigrants and refugees, single mothers, and adults living in poverty, and those that were deemed as most distant from the labor market, struggling with mental health and addictions issues. We asked the career development professionals on our research team to use Prime for a period of 18 months, tracking changes in clients' strengths and needs across those 36 indicators that I just showed you. And what we found in a nutshell were significantly positive changes in clients across all 6 career development dimensions and 36 indicators. And when you own your own data, when you really are in control of your own data, you can slice and dice it in very interesting ways. And with mental health and well-being being such a political priority and a social priority, at least here in Canada right now, we were able to also demonstrate that career services resulted in statistically significant positive changes for those being served because we had 16 indicators of mental health and well-being embedded within Prime. And so we were really excited to see how having access to that kind of data could contribute to the sector's evidence base and help us to tell a tale of client transformation that extended far beyond the traditional metrics that we're using, at least here in Canada. And we were also excited to hear from the frontline staff that were part of our team that having access to that kind of real-time data was not only motivating, but also provided a stronger focus that would inform sort of a deeper connection and exploration with the client and quicker and more targeted progress. So that was the research in a nutshell. Almost as an afterthought, we thought, wouldn't it be interesting to explore whether being part of a research project had any impact on the career professionals? And so we decided to examine that at the same time. So what impact, if any, did being a researcher practitioner have on those members of our team? We explored changes in those participating in the research with respect to 32 different indicators across 5 dimensions. We looked at professionalism, ethical practice, client engagement, quality service, and evidence-based impact. So to do that piece of the research, we surveyed frontline career professionals across the region where we were conducting the survey. We included, obviously, in that survey, those staff that were working across the 6 agencies that were participating in the research, but we also surveyed their peers who were working in the same agencies as they were or in like agencies. And we surveyed them twice. once before the research started, and then again after the research had ended. And all the results are based on self-ratings across a 5-point Likert scale. So we were able to confirm that group 1, which is the group that participated in our research, was not substantively different from group 2, which is the group that did not participate in our research at time 1. So before they had started the research, there were no substantive changes in the two differences across the two groups. What we found at time 2, though, after they had participated in the research, was that those career professionals who had participated in the research, we saw remarkable differences across all 5 dimensions and all 32 indicators that were tracked. So I'm going to go through this data quite quickly because the story is a similar one across these slides. So the first indicator, the first dimension that we looked at was professionalism. There were 13 indicators that we assessed under that dimension. And you can see right across the board, those that participated in the research, group 2, rated themselves more highly at time 2 than group 1 did, than group 2 did. So those that participated in the research rated themselves more positively, and we saw statistically significant differences in terms of their clarity around their scope of practice, their preparation in terms of seeking and completing training that was needed for their role, and their capacity to access resources and tools to support their practice. Carrying on the theme of professionalism, we saw that statistically significant differences in that group's proactive reaching out and feeling connected to the community of practice of other professionals, both locally and nationally and internationally. So they were much more connected to their profession. And again, under professionalism, the last 3 indicators, we saw the same pattern with, interestingly, statistically significant changes in terms of their pursuit of professional certification. And so those that had participated in the research were much more likely to have either pursued certification or be in progress of becoming certified as a career development professional. If we look at ethical practice, again, we had 2 indicators. Both were, we showed statistically significant positive changes of those who had participated in the research, both in terms of their understanding of and their application of our code of ethics as a profession. In terms of client engagement, which was the 3rd dimension that we looked at, we had 5 indicators. And these really speak to the heart of the relationship between the professional and the person receiving services and its power in creating the power of that collaboration. So again, very similar pattern in the data. In every case, we saw that those that had participated in the research rated themselves more positively around those indicators of client engagement. In terms of quality service, the 4th dimension, again, the pattern continues with statistically significant positive difference around that whole area of progress. And that's an important one. One of the things that we saw very clearly was that when career professionals are really attuned to not just the end outcome, but the progress that is happening along the way, services can be incrementally tailored and much more effective. And then finally, the 5th dimension, the whole area of evidence-informed practice. We saw the first 5 indicators here speak to that idea of evidence-informed practice. We saw statistically significant differences around access to data that's meaningful and accurate, having a system that allows you to do that, but again, same pattern right across the board with those that had participated in the research, rating themselves more positively than those who had not. And then finally, in terms of impact, Again, the same pattern we have seen right across the board. We saw statistically significant differences, particularly with respect to having strong evidence of a positive impact and being empowered to improve impact. And so, you know, the tale of transformation for the career professional who were part of our research team was very consistent across all 5 dimensions and all 32 indicators that we assessed. So what are the benefits of being an everyday researcher? You know, after having participated in the research, and we saw that 100% of group 1, so those who were part of our research team, agreed with these statements that you see on the slide. And you know, when we did our final debrief, I will never forget, we had a meeting of the full research team and we presented the results. And we had brand new practitioners and we had very seasoned practitioners who were part of our research team. And one of the women who had been in the field for close to 30 years, she was an absolutely committed career professional, and she had worked on the front lines her whole life with single mothers living in poverty. And she started to cry. And she said that it was the first time in her professional career that she had really been able to co-create meaningful data with her clients that showed the positive impact of the work that they were doing together. And it was profound that after all of those years, she said, I knew it in my heart, but to actually be actively engaged in shaping a research project that clearly demonstrated it was a profound gift for her near the end of her career. So I think, you know, the data would certainly suggest that there are strong benefits to frontline career professionals in engaging in research. What about service recipients? So again, these are statements that 100% of those on the front lines that were part of our research team agreed with. And many of our research team who were frontline practitioners really talked about the impact of contributing to research on their clients, how having access to real-time data on their progress was motivating and really helped to propel and focus their career-related goals and actions. And we've had some subsequent experience in other research projects that we've conducted since this one, where from the beginning we have engaged with service recipients. So the clients that are receiving services, again, to help us to shape the research question, to help us shape the methodology and understand the data. And again, you know, we're really coming to the conclusion that clients gain enormously as well from being asked to contribute to the research process. Not only does it make the research more meaningful, but it, you know, if you think about the protective factors in resilience, being able to contribute back rather than to just be a burden on society is one of the key protective factors in resilience. And then finally, I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that conducting research in real time and in full partnership with frontline practitioners is deeply gratifying and enhancing on so many fronts as a researcher. You know, I cannot tell you the number of reality checks that we got where we thought everything looked great on paper, but having the insights of somebody on the front lines to do that reality check was hugely helpful. We absolutely learned much more deeply than we would have had we been working in isolation. You know, Prime is just one example, but the tool itself, what we were developing and trying to refine, would not be anywhere near as strong as it is had we not been working directly with the front lines. You know, that application to learning, you know, I do think as researchers, ultimately, at least that's my bias, we're wanting to influence and enhance practice. And conducting research with the front lines, I think, increases the chance of that happening dramatically. And of course, we also leave this research project with all kinds of ideas of what we want to do next, thanks to those on the front lines, because they have a lens on what's needed in a way that we often don't. And so I come back to our respective goals that I spoke about at the very beginning of this talk. That as researchers, we want to make a difference. We want to uncover new truths. We want to foster innovation and ultimately influence practice. As career professionals, we want to be grounded conceptually, to work from an evidence base and have real impact. And so to me, our goals are so aligned and so complementary, and together we can achieve them much more fully than we can in isolation of one another. So I come back to these big audacious questions that I posed earlier on, and I'd like to invite you to reflect on them now in the context of what you've heard presented, but also in the context of your own experiences as researchers, as frontline career professionals, or as other related roles that you might play. So why do we conduct research? What are the benefits of research, and who really gains? And importantly, what is the art of the possible when it comes to maximizing the reach and the benefits of research? So I know that our NICEC, I'm going to just stop sharing for a moment. I know that our NICEC hosts are all organized to give some time in small groups. Welcome back again, everyone. So I hope you had great discussions in your breakout rooms. I know that we in our little mini breakout room had some great conversations. I know that there are time limitations because we do want to leave lots of time for the main event, which is of course hearing from the candidates and having the award actually announced. But I am interested and would invite anybody to just put into the chat any comments or anything that sort of stood out to you from your discussions that you think would be of interest to others. And if one or two of you had something that you thought was particularly interested and maybe relevant to all, I'd invite you to unmute and just jump in and share that. I think we have time for at least one or two to actually share live. So I'd invite any brave soul who would like to just share anything that struck you from your conversations in the breakout room.
I guess people could raise their hand, couldn't they, if they want to make themselves known? Yeah, either using the emoji or literally. Yeah.
I was like, actually, I could do that electronically. Sorry.
No, it's good we saw you.
Thanks. I was just saying how pleased I was that you'd involve practitioners in the research from the start, because I think that's just really refreshing, and it was so good to hear how they've been impacted in a positive way as a result of the research as well. So I was just thought it all sounded really positive.
It did feel like a real win-win, well, really a win-win-win all around, including those that were receiving services. Yeah, certainly from my point of view as a researcher, it was one of the most robust and meaningful research projects I think I've ever been involved with. I see a comment. We spoke about how interesting it was that you chose to work with participants and not researched on them. Yeah, absolutely. There's a big difference, isn't there?
Sareena, if people wanted to read more about your research, where would they find it? It's probably been published, has it, somewhere in lots of places? I don't know, but is there a quick reference place they could?
I'll pop a link into the chat. Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. Yeah, it is on the Canadian Career Development Foundation website, but I'll just pop a direct link into the chat so that you don't have to search your way around our cumbersome website.
Super.
So any other comments or before we move on to the big main event?
Siobhan's got her hand up.
I've always got my hand up. Sareena, I just want to say you made my heart sing with your presentation because you've just articulated so many of the things that I think we've been trying to articulate, and probably far less succinctly and powerfully than you have just done with the research that you've presented. And I think there's just such powerful messages in there around the applicability of research for all practitioners, regardless of where they're working. And I'm looking forward, I've already downloaded the report, so I'm looking forward to reading that a bit later.
Oh, great. Thanks, Siobhan. Thank you. Yeah, and I did see a question around the funding. It came from one of our provincial governments and through a body called the Newfoundland Workforce Innovation Center. So it was government funded, and the lovely thing is, once one of our provincial governments has an interest, the word spreads, and so a number of other provincial governments have since become really interested in the project and in the work and the approach.
Great.
So I think with that, I'm aware of the time, and I don't want to in any way step on the time where the spotlight will be on the amazing researchers that are here to be celebrated today. So with that, I just say thank you so much. I honor each and every one of you, and I'm just delighted to have had this chance, and I can't wait to hear the theses from these phenomenal researchers. So thanks so much.
Well, thank you, Sareena. That was an absolutely fantastic way to start the event. We really, really appreciate you coming along. So Sareena's very kindly talking about the next bit as being the main event, and I kind of know what you mean, Sareena, but yours has been absolutely amazing. But yeah, so we really are here to honour and to thank and to be curious about the research that our sort of up and coming researchers are doing. So perhaps these are the Sareenas of the future that we're about to hear from now. So what we asked everybody to do, because we just loved their research, we thought every single person's research that we read was absolutely worthy of sharing. So we thought we'd try this idea of the 3-minute thesis. You might well have come across this idea before. It's a kind of, I think it's a global competition that people do for their PhDs. They try and kind of boil them down to sort of one slide in 3 minutes. And that's quite a challenge when you've spent literally months and months working on a particular project. So we really appreciate that our shortlisted candidates have done this for us. So I've got the slide deck, so I'm going to share my screen, and then one by one we're going to give each of them 3 minutes. I'm afraid we won't have any chance for questions as we go through. Do feel free to pop your questions in the chat, and then perhaps the candidates can have a look at them afterwards and sort of reply directly. But right, let me start sharing my screen. I can't even remember who we've got up first, so we will find that out in just a second. So there we go. That's the starting point. So it's Camille. Are you there, Camille?
Yes. Can you hear me?
I can hear you beautifully. There we go. There's your lovely slide.
Yeah.
3 minutes.
Okay, away we go. So my name's Camille Harn. I just want to make 2 clarifications. First of all, the phenomenal researchers are coming on after me, and as you can see by my appearance, I'm not exactly up and coming. But my background is I've been a medical doctor for over 30 years. Some of you will know that the meaning of the word doctor is actually teacher. And within medicine, we have an apprenticeship model where we not only train our colleagues, but we're assessing and supporting. So my role in careers has been to support the doctors who are in the postgraduate deanery in Northern Ireland. So that's a population of 1,800 doctors who are in postgraduate training. So when a doctor qualifies, they're actually fairly undifferentiated. There's about 150 different specialisms they can take after that. And that takes quite a bit of time. And at present, we have a lot of challenges. We don't train enough doctors in the UK, and quite a lot of our younger doctors are choosing to take time out from their training, and that has impacts on the workforce that we have available. In terms of career support within the postgraduate deanery, I would be covering the full remit, one-to-one support, educating the trainees, educating the trainers on careers topics, and also representing ourselves in regional bodies. My piece of research was a piece of action research. I chose this methodology because it seemed very practical to me. I could undertake my practice, undertake actions, and do the research simultaneously. Within action research, in this schematic, you'll see that there's cycles of action, reflection, and through the critical reflection, you will generate knowledge. I like it because it provides practical solutions, and your stakeholders are your collaborators as well, and also introduced me to reflexivity and further reflection on my values. Julie, if you're nodding, just tell me, just do that when it's time to finish, okay? Okay, my data came from literature, surveys, and a reflective log as a practitioner. And here are my research questions. So what career support would be useful? And I could talk at length from that, from all the ideas, mainly that came from our actual trainees. Can doctors deliver career support to doctors? Quick answer there is yes, but obviously we have to be aware of our limitations. For example, quite often doctors in practice have supervisors in the hospital, but that's not really going to give them good career support with regard to general practice, which we have a shortage of. In terms of career development theory, can that help? Absolutely. And I looked at different theories. In particular, I looked at areas of challenge, which include burnout for doctors. So at any one point in time, about a third of doctors are burnt out, similar to other professions that work with people. Burnout has actually increased over the pandemic period. When you think about young doctors who are newly qualified, they're having to go to different regions, they're separated from their family. Quite often your work colleagues become your social support in that situation. And I was very interested in how we could take community interaction theory and actually apply it in that situation, thinking about the influence of the medical and the workplace communities on the career development for these doctors. So I'm going to finish there and say thank you to Jill Frigerio, who was my supervisor, who was very tolerant. I started from a very low base, and thank you for that, Jill. Thank you.
Camille, that was amazing. It strikes me that 3 minutes really isn't very long, but you managed to get an awful lot of information into that, and what a fabulous project. Right, so who we got up next? Let's have a look. Erin, are you there, Erin? You put in the chat, I noticed that you're normally based in Loch Lomond, which sounds amazing. But are you there, Erin?
I'm here.
Fantastic. There you go. Are you good to go, Erin?
Thank you. So my project, can you hear me?
Yes.
So let me introduce you to Riley. Some of you may be familiar with her from the Disney movie Inside Out. Now, bear with me. Riley is an excellent example of the typical teenager who is characterised in the movie as being controlled by her feelings, joy, anger and sadness. And I'm sure we all recognise a teenager gripped by one or more of these emotions. You see, teenagers are undergoing a substantial period of brain development and reorganisation to prepare them for independence from the family unit. Their brains are undergoing synaptic pruning and myelination. This accounts for these stereotypical behaviours of attraction to risk, sensitive emotions, and self-focused perspective. However, it also brings them to a time of extreme sensitivity to teaching, akin to that of early childhood, meaning there is a unique time for us to work with this age group to instill lifelong career planning, which is in turn proven to boost mental health and adult success. My dissertation explored this in terms of how sensitive to risk secondary school pupils in Scotland are. Very, and how they viewed their future pathways. You see, adolescents do not make decisions in the same way we as adults do. What this meant for me as a careers advisor is that we're approaching guidance for adolescents from the wrong perspective. We do not see adolescents as a distinct client group. I know I, like many other careers advisors, I'm guilty of standing up in front of my classes and making good logical arguments about when they should start their career planning, which quite simply does not compute with their decision making at this time. Adolescents struggle with long-term logical planning. They do not have the same sense of perspective when it comes to themselves or the future. They see things in the immediate, which is why they make to us such frustrating choices and mistakes. As guidance practitioners, we need to work out how to support young people with their decision making and make use of different tools and techniques that support the developing brain. My project focused on the effect of engaging the limbic system, the seat of emotion and creativity in the brain, a region that develops earlier in teenagers and is sensitive throughout adolescence. What I found throughout my research was that by using more creative materials, such as visualization exercises, naming emotions, and art techniques, helped adolescents to become more confident in envisaging their future. We need to utilise these findings, as well as those from other areas such as neuroscience, to inform our practice. I hope to delve deeper into this subject matter through a PhD and implore other research practitioners to take note of these findings. Adolescents make decisions differently. We need to use more creative tools to support this, to enable them to see their future selves, strengthen their executive functions, and become healthier, more successful lifelong career planners like Riley. Thank you, and I'd like to thank Emma Bolger, who was my supervisor throughout this and supported me wonderfully throughout it with all my silly questions. Thank you, Emma.
Unmuted. Erin, that was absolutely amazing. I'm sorry I messed up a bit with those amazing animations. They didn't quite come at the right time, but that was absolutely superb. Thank you very much. And so brilliant to hear that you're going on to doing a PhD next. That's amazing to hear. Right, right, Karen, talking of PhDs, are you there, Karen?
I am, yes.
Fantastic. Right, you ready to go?
Yes. So the title of my submission was Seeking Social Justice, What Can Be Gained from Involving Autistic Students as Partners in the Design of Tailored Employability Provision. So why did I choose this as a topic? Well, first of all, in the UK and also internationally, the number of autistic students in universities is increasing each year. But unfortunately, something else that's quite well known is that autistic graduates frequently have poor employment outcomes. In fact, AGCAS, the What Happens Next reports, finds every year that autistic graduates are more likely to be unemployed than any other disabled graduate group. So I just really wanted to do something about this. So this is the kind of topic of my PhD. And I wanted to do more than just understand better. I wanted to bring about change. So I chose participatory action research, which has a theme of emancipation and transformation. And I just thought autistic students and graduates, they're a disadvantaged group. And I really want to do something that redresses that inequality and brings about justice. And the participatory element just made sense to involve those that I was seeking to support. So what did I do and what did we do? Well, first of all, I recruited 6 autistic student consultants at Liverpool John Moores, where I'm based as a careers consultant. And we co-analysed a survey that had been done on all autistic students in the university, asking them what they wanted in terms of career support and provision. So we co-analysed that, and then we co-designed a programme that was an employability-based programme, a series of webinars. It was during COVID, and so that's what we did. We then sort of co-analysed how that had gone and thought about how to do things better the following year. In terms of the impact of the project, I've just been really excited by some of the themes. I'm still in the process of this. I'm on the next cycle now, so they are emerging themes. First of all, the employability programme was well received. We got good feedback from the autistic students who'd come along. But I think what I'm finding more exciting are those glimpses of transformation. So for myself as a practitioner, actually involving those that I'm seeking to support has led to just increasing in confidence and just feeling like I'm doing the thing that actually those I'm trying to support want. But then also those autistic student consultants, I've also seen them and they've told me they've grown in confidence. They're feeling part of a community and they've loved that. And it's reframing how they see themselves. In fact, so much that 2 of the 6 are actually saying it's changed their career ideas. They want to now go on to work in inclusivity and diversity in the workplace when they graduate. In addition, I'm just seeing a ripple effect, sort of as some of us are speaking at conferences together, myself and the consultants, and we're working on institutionally wide sort of disability employability projects. And so I'm just really excited about where this is going to go. Other teams within the university are also starting to take on this approach of co-creation. So thank you. I'll stop there. I feel that was like stop. It's all been good.
I was just trying to unmute myself. Karen, now listening to you, I can so see why Sareena's approach to research resonated with you. There's an awful lot of overlap there, isn't there?
Yes, definitely.
Right, I've already trailed our next speaker, haven't I? So Namita, are you there?
Yes, I am. And thanks, everybody, for all of that's amazing. And hello from Singapore. So excuse me if I'm a few hours not in time zone. So basically, my research, I'm sorry it's really small, was a constructivist grounded theory study of lawyer career craft. And the reason for this is basically because I am a lawyer, but I'm also a career coach. So I wear 2 hats. And I've always been interested in the evolution of working norms, and especially in my case, in the professional services sector, because there is, you know, a lot of literature about precarious working, etc. But one thing about professional services, and anybody who knows about lawyers, is that it's a very traditional and linear career route. So when you talk about career in the most traditional sense, you have the career ladder from trainee all the way to partner. And for a lot of people, that's all there is once you're a lawyer. So I was really, really curious about the experience of knowledge workers who chose to become independent workers. And in my research, I call them gig lawyers, borrowing from the term of gig workers, and contrasting with the term used in professional services of big lawyers. So again, you know, these are strange terms outside of the legal industry. And I was particularly curious about how people experience the transition between the two different working environments. So my research question was basically, how do lawyers experience and respond to their changes working in a professional partnership law firm to gig working? And because there was really a dearth of theories and literature on this, I was interested in building a theory, which is why I use CGT, or a constructivist grounded theory, because there really wasn't a theory and a transition process to sort of describe and explain or really try to understand this transition. So I interviewed a range of male and female lawyers from around the world to really get you know, as much data as I can. And basically, you can see, based on the data, I built a theory which is reflected in that little diagram over there. And I have to caveat the generalizability because, you know, of course, because of the method that I used, you know, this is really peculiar to my particular data set. But what I got is that my participants really experienced this particular transition through various agentic and emergent limbs. And drawing on the very nascent concept of career craft, what I found is that they were crafting proactive and reactive actions, crafting goals, priorities, and self-awareness, adjusting to gains and losses, and using their big law legal skills, network, and background as crafting tools. And craft, as I said, comes from a lot of the existing crafting literature, but also building from the data, the language that participants were using. And one of the big findings I found is that paradoxically, in this change process, there's really a tension between continuity and change. And whenever we talk about transition, it's about, you know, change, but the continuity and change was something which really came across in the data. And also in terms of application, I think the theory can offer a discussion framework for career professionals who want to use craft as a heuristic to talk about transitions, and really the recognizing the salience of continuity in the change project, in the change process, and the various paradoxes and tensions that you can find in this. So again, you know, written a lot of things for people who want to go into more detail, and happy to share later. So I'm done. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Namita. That's brilliant. And that's another really interesting. I love the grounded theory as a way to sort of analyze the data. That's a brilliant approach. Right, let's see who's next up. Sophie, are you around, Sophie?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Julia.
Brilliant. Okay, over to you.
Great. Hi, everyone. My submission to the Bill Law Award was based on my dissertation for my master's course that I finished last summer. And that research really focused on a point of time during my career where we were working completely remotely during the pandemic. And I was also training to become a qualified careers advisor. During that time, I started to think a lot more about how the digital impact on my role and the huge change it had on my working practices could affect my professional identity. So this is what the research explored. I utilised an auto-ethnographic research method, which became quite a big focal point of my research, and I really enjoyed getting stuck into that as a research method, because it is quite controversial and has its critics. But in a nutshell, it involves the researcher being also the research subject. So I was part of a community that I wanted to research further. I wanted to understand how these digital differences could impact on professional identity, and I chose to use myself as the research subject. So the data I collected was captured by memory data that I recalled throughout the course of working remotely during the pandemic, and I also completed structured journal entries as well, which I then analysed. And I identified 3 key themes, or 3 key areas that I felt impacted on my professional identity during this time, particularly relating to increased digitalisation of my working practices. One of the main ones was my continuing professional development. As a newly qualified careers advisor, I was presented with loads of opportunities to develop myself professionally. Online, I could engage in conferences and online courses that maybe weren't available to me before, but I didn't always know how to navigate those different options, and I didn't necessarily always engage in activities that were of the most use to me. My confidence as a practitioner developed during this time as well, particularly in the use of digital tools and learning new digital tools really quickly, but also in things like delivering online workshops and talks to hundreds of students in attendance. Yet maybe if my Wi-Fi dropped in an appointment or meeting, I felt that this impacted on me negatively and how I was perceived professionally, even if it wasn't necessarily in my control. And finally, my network and professional profile was impacted during this time as well. So I really utilised LinkedIn. I attended an online conference that I couldn't have attended if it was in person. And on the flip side of that, noticed how I lacked the confidence to engage in an informal networking feature that a digital platform had on offer. So what this research really allowed me to do was engage in practitioner research, and really showed me the importance of that. It's something I want to continue doing as a relatively newly qualified careers advisor. I really feel the autoethnographic method is helpful and useful for practitioner researchers. It utilises a lot of the tools or a lot of the skills rather that we have already, like self-awareness and reflection. But it obviously has its limitations, so it can't be generalized to everyone. It speaks to my unique experience during this point of time.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sophie. An awful lot there that I'm sure a lot of us can relate to. So thank you very much for that. Right, Petra, are you around?
I am.
You're joining us from Norway today, aren't you?
True that, yes.
Brilliant. Do go ahead.
All right, thank you. Well, the title of my paper is Developing Community Interaction Theory in Curricular Career Learning in Norway. And Bill Law's community interaction theory draws attention to the importance of reflecting on interactions between contexts and cultures and contexts as sources of complexity in career education. As Bill Law states, because it is complexity which offers options, identifies causes and effects, and enables autonomy. And hereby foreground significance is given to the emancipatory purpose of career education. And such career learning activities between contexts are common practice here in Norway in lower secondary schools, where career education is organized through an obligatory curricular subject called educational choice, or utdanningsvalg, serving students aged 13 to 16. And in my paper, I explore how qualitative research into career education in Norway can inform a further development of community interaction theory. So the empirical studies which are basis for this paper were conducted as an action research project at one school, entailing collaboration between 5 teachers, 2 career counselors, and myself during this course of one school year. And the aim of the project was to develop collective knowledge on the subject of educational choice, with particular focus on workplace visits. And the voices of students were included in this research through 4 focus groups, and all this data is part of my PhD. And the first finding sheds light on the purpose of career education, which is not about reducing students' role to social adaptation, but to free students from fixed perceptions about future work and education through critical awareness. Secondly, students express the desire for more experience-based learning, allowing for a richer complexity of experience to relate to. Furthermore, career education is not intended to make school and working life similar context, but to regard tensions and contradictions across contexts as sources of reflection, emphasizing the importance of contextualization in learning processes. And finally, findings show the potential for collective reflection after placement activities and can be considered a valuable source to increase complexity and raise critical awareness in career education. And these 4 findings give foreground significance to values and qualities that are already embedded in community interaction theory, as illustrated in the model. but my intention is to contribute to actualization and further development and discussion of Bill Law's community interaction theory, both in Norway and internationally. And I argue that community interaction theory should not be diminished to response to labour market needs, but needs to be considered a response to students' needs for identity and community exploration, which involves dealing with both emancipation and adaptation regarding their roles in society. Thank you.
That's amazing, Petra. Thank you so much. That's such a practical project, which is amazing. And how lovely that you're using Bill's very own community interaction theory. That feels very appropriate. Right, we've got a couple left. Cordelia, are you around there?
Hello, I'm here. Hi.
Lovely to see you.
Too. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay, I will. I just have to say, Sareena, I'm from Ottawa too. So from one Ottawa to another, hello. My background's in the voluntary sector, and I worked with an awful lot of people who were just coming into retirement over the years, which made me really interested in sort of retirement and career and how they were associated. So I spoke to interviewees who were all 55 plus and semi-retired by choice, because I was really interested in the kind of people who were between the two worlds and what their experience was. The career world, as we know, has originally been focused on kind of entering career or mid-career, but retirement has suddenly bloomed in the literature, and there are all sorts of terms for retirement and career, like encore career, bridge employment, unretiring, silver work. I use the term semi-retirement to describe the research to my participants, because I didn't think they'd know any of the other ones, to be fair to them. Interestingly, most of them said, I would never describe myself as semi-retired. I would describe myself as working part-time or a consultant, but I would never use those words. Retirement was very much seen as a life phase by the people who I spoke to. They talked about it in terms of time and age and stage very, very clearly. And they talked a lot about how important having choice and agency was in the stage they were at. Obviously, these are people who had chosen to be semi-retired, so it's not surprising, but it was the degree to which they spoke about choice and agency was really striking. Most interesting in a sense was that they talked about the work that they did, the part-time work, as something that could be taken or left. They would call it odds and ends, a small job, bits and pieces, I'm just doing a little admin job, that kind of thing. So that kind of language was really echoed very strongly throughout the group. And a lot of them had real discomfort about the idea of career, which was interesting. Many people said, oh, I didn't have a career. I wouldn't call what I did a career. I would talk about my work, but I don't see it as a career. There were often some very divided emotions on that period. So, I mean, there's some interesting practice issues there. I'm very much a practitioner. And if you're working with people around retirement, but the word retirement isn't attractive and the word career isn't, something which is meaningful, how do you do that? So it was very interesting research. A final point is a recent potential client. I said, what are you looking to do? Somebody who's approaching retirement age, and she said, I want to get a little LIDL job. So echoing that sense of little job. Anyway, thank you everybody, and big thanks to Janet Sheath, who is my supervisor.
Thank you, Cordelia. That's great. So interesting to reflect on those terms, isn't it, and what they mean to different people. That's brilliant. Right, Fadei, are you around?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you beautifully. Let me just get your slide up. There we go.
Hi, so my name is Fadei, and I am a registered career development professional. My research was carried out at Nottingham Trent University as part of my master's degree, and it focused on BAME women's professional experience and the things that they felt in the guidance sector through the lens of intersectionality theory and introducing decolonizing methodology. This was a very new niche piece of research, and the rationale behind this is that BAME women make up 16% of the female working age population, and despite this, their voices are largely absent in research. And in the career guidance sector, you know, the camera rarely pans to the career guidance professional. So that's what my research focused on. It was based on 7 participants. The intersectionality theory bit is the idea that 2 or more dimensions of identity, such as gender and ethnicity, can result in multiple complex layers of discrimination and disadvantage. So that combination of being female and BAME. Decolonization refers to the idea of recognizing and transforming our minds from colonial ideology. So really bringing that focus and worldview of non-Western individuals, but also examining our own biases and questioning these. So what my research has found was based upon the experiences of being female, separating that out, and the experiences of being BAME. So some of the themes that emerged was that, you know, the perceptions of my participants were that they did have instances where they have felt discrimination in the workplace, in the career guidance workplace. There were also instances of unconscious biases and microaggressions, which are quite subtle, very difficult to label. So particularly with being female, some examples include being a frail woman, being talked down to by older white male staff, being treated differently. And for being BAME, it was sort of demoralizing remarks about physical appearance. And also, one of the participants felt that they were, quote, white enough to be accepted. So there were emerging themes that were, you know, quite difficult to label, but it obviously showed a lot of discomfort because these are still forms of discrimination. And then some of the other themes include progression. There's a difficulty in progression for roles higher up, and the gender pay gap starts existing higher up. And for BAME, they felt that they needed a lot of confidence and it was necessary, and they felt they needed to work harder. They also felt that there were barriers in progression because there weren't any mentors. So these are some of the themes that have emerged. There were some positive experience as well, but these are mainly the focus of my research. And I think what I would like to end with is that because this hadn't been researched before, it is really important that we have a focus on, you know, the groups that haven't been researched, so that we can understand their experiences. Because if there are these unconscious biases, how can we support BAME women in their career progression, and how can we start the process of decolonization? Because without awareness, you know, we can't even begin to decolonize career guidance sector.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that. That was so interesting to reflect on our very own profession. I love that note that you ended on about that, the value of qualitative research, particularly giving a voice to people who don't have a voice. So thank you very much for that. So thank you to all our contributors. What an amazing set of, actually, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so I can see you all. Sorry, there we go. Right, thank you all so much. Such a lot of amazing contributors, such a lot of interesting research, and such a lot of great communicators as well. You all did an amazing job of kind of, you know, summing up such a lot of work in such a short amount of time. So that's absolutely brilliant. Right, now for the exciting bit of the evening, where I'm going to hand over to Jill, who I think will be able to tell us who's won. Jill, over to you.
Thank you, Julia, and thank you everyone who's made this such a special evening. I've been live tweeting as we've got a bit carried away with a couple of gifts, so I hope that they are in the spirit of the this event, this supportive event, celebrating Bill's work and also celebrating the work that practitioner researchers, student researchers are doing and have shared with us tonight. It's been brilliant. So I have the delightful task of sharing with you who is highly commended and who has won the award. So let's hope I've got the right envelopes, and I'm not going to present any awards to La La Land. But first of all, then, our highly commended entrant is Petra Royce from University of Southeastern Norway. Thank you very much for your entry, Petra. It's lovely to be celebrating with you. The judges have this to say about your entry. They said they've enjoyed reading your paper. It was well written. It highlighted the use of theory as a lens for developing practice. Your focus on the development of Law's community interaction theory gave new insight into the relationship between career learning and emancipation. We found your work to be applicable to practitioners developing programs, career development programs, and involved in work experience. The panel all valued your work and would like to recognise this with our commendation. So very, very many congratulations to you. I'm sure Bill would have been at the forefront of the ongoing turn towards social justice in careers work if he was still with us. And your work really shows his legacy being taken forward. So well done to you.
Thank you so much, Jill. That is really
You're really welcome. So moving on then, you all want to know who has won the award this year. It's a big award, not a little one. And it's for Cordelia Wise. Very many congratulations to you, Cordelia. You've shared your work with us around semi-retirement and found it quite inspiring, I have to say. Anyway, the judges said this about your entry. We enjoyed reading your paper. It's very well written, highlights a very contemporary issue. You included a really strong literature review, which was very well referenced, and a strong narrative running throughout. Good, clear themes, which were clearly expressed, and you illustrated with relevant quotes. Your discussion very clearly situates the findings within the existing literature, a particular highlight. Once again, very many thanks for your commitment to your topic and for sharing your research with us. So that's really brilliant, Cordelia. Very well done to you. And your prize will be winging its way to you from the NICEC Fellows as soon as humanly possible. Cordelia, I think you might be, yeah, you've unmuted now.
I was just going to say thank you, and I'm in complete shock. So I don't think I have any words. My little Canadian voice doesn't have many words to say other than thank you very much.
You're really welcome, and I love to see what you were saying about thematic analysis in your blurb. I've just rushed home from teaching a class about that very thing, so I shall tell my students that it's worth getting to grips with Brown and Clark. Yeah, very well done. Well, what a great night. I can now, as soon as we've concluded the proceedings, I will go back to Twitter and share with the world who's won tonight. I'm sure we're all, well, I'm certainly feeling inspired by Sareena and what she's been sharing with us about particularly the impact on practitioners of being involved in research. And that's been a real theme all the way through this evening, hasn't it, about involving people, co-creation, and giving voice to our experiences working in the career development field and the experiences of the people we work with. I want to thank Nicki, Julia, Rosemary, Michael on the technical side, everyone involved in NICEC who's been involved in putting this event together. It's really very much appreciated from all the fellows, and we'll see, won't be long before we're starting again to look for entrants for next year. So if you're a student researcher who's feeling inspired by those who've gone before you, then we look forward to getting to seeing your entries. Thank you very much, everybody, and thanks everyone.
Good night, everyone. Thank you very much.
Yeah, bye everyone.